I always believed that if I did everything right, my parents would eventually be proud of me. That if I checked all the boxes, good grades, a stable career, a loving partner, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at my brother Ethan, like I was someone worth admiring. But life has a cruel way of proving that some people will never clap for you, even if you give them a standing ovation every day of their lives. The morning after Jordan proposed to me was like a dream. He did it at the botanical garden, just the two of us under an archway of blooming white roses. I cried. He laughed nervously. And when I said yes, I felt like the world cracked open with joy. For once, I felt like my story was starting to become mine. Not a shadow of my brother's accomplishments or my parents' expectations, just mine. I called my mom first. I didn't even wait to catch my breath from the excitement. She picked up after the third ring. Say, Mom, I have something to tell you. Jordan proposed last night. There was silence, not even the delayed gasp I'd imagined. Oh, she said flatly. So, you're engaged. That's nice. Nice. That word sank like a stone in my chest. I pushed on, trying to fill the awkward gap. We're planning an engagement party in 3 weeks. We'd love for you and Dad to come. Jordan's parents are flying in from Oregon, and I already booked a little venue near our place. Another pause. Well, 3 weeks from now, that's going to be tricky. Your brother's company is throwing him a promotion party in Chicago that weekend. We already bought the tickets. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. Wait, you're serious? Sweetheart, she said, like I was the one being unreasonable. This is a big deal for Ethan, regional manager at 28. Not everyone gets that kind of recognition. I wanted to scream, Mom, I'm getting engaged. Isn't that a big deal, too? But her voice stayed cool. You've always been independent. I thought you'd understand. We'll do a dinner with you some other time. I hung up and sat in my kitchen in silence. Jordan walked in, saw my face, and didn't even have to ask. He just held me. The rest of the day felt like I was living someone else's life. How could my own parents treat my engagement like a calendar conflict? Like a hair appointment they forgot to cancel? I wish I could say this was surprising, but the truth is, Ethan had always been the golden child. When he got a C+ in high school chemistry, my dad blamed the teacher. When I got an A-, I got a lecture about how you can always do better. When Ethan crashed his second car, my mom said, boys will be boys. When I backed into a parking post in college, I was called careless, immature, irresponsible. He got praise. I got pressure. Even now, my parents' house looked like a shrine to him. His high school trophies still lined the hallway. His graduation photos hung proudly in the living room. My pictures, maybe 1 or 2, buried in dusty frames behind stacks of magazines. It was like I'd always just been there, never the favorite, never even a close second. Still, I had held on to this naive hope that this moment, this celebration of my future with the man I loved, would be different. That for once they'd show up for me, that I would matter. But they chose Ethan again. The days leading up to the engagement party felt surreal. Jordan's parents were warm and thrilled, calling to ask if I needed anything. My best friends went all out, helping me pick decorations, even surprising me with a dress I never could have afforded on my own. The people who wanted to be, they made sure I knew I was loved. But the ones who didn't, they didn't call. They didn't send flowers. They didn't even text the day of. The night of the party arrived, and I stood by the doors of the venue, watching guests arrive. Everyone looked beautiful, beaming, excited. Jordan kept squeezing my hand, reminding me how loved I was. And yet, a part of me kept glancing at the entrance, hoping stupidly, desperately, that maybe my parents would still show up. They didn't. Instead, I got tagged in a Facebook post. A photo of my mom and dad grinning ear to ear, champagne flutes raised, standing beside Ethan under a glittering banner that read, "Congrats, regional rock star." The caption, "So proud of our boy." Wouldn't miss this moment for the world. I read it over and over, like maybe if I stared long enough, it would change. But it didn't. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, not even in sadness. It was something colder, quieter, a realization that the years I had spent bending over backward to earn their love had been wasted. That I had mistaken neglect for strictness and favoritism for fairness. That night, I smiled for every photo. I danced until my feet ached. I laughed, not because I felt joy, but because I had finally stopped expecting it from people who never gave it freely. And then, when the night ended and Jordan kissed me goodnight, I sat alone on the edge of the bed, staring at the engagement ring on my finger. I realized that I didn't need my parents to witness this chapter, because they had never really been part of any chapter of mine. They just turned the pages when Ethan's name appeared. But this story, this was mine now. And I had a plan. Not to punish them, not to hurt them, but to finally step out of the shadows and remind them what they lost when they refused to show up. I wasn't going to beg for love anymore. I was going to build a life that made their absence irrelevant. But first, I had to make one last move, one they'd never forget. 2 months after the engagement party, I mailed the wedding invitations. Jordan and I had decided on a spring ceremony, a small coastal venue where the breeze kissed your face and the ocean sang soft promises in the background. Every detail felt like a reflection of who we were. Calm, steady, filled with quiet love. I sent my parents an invitation, too. Not because I expected them to come, but because I wanted them to know there was still a seat waiting if they chose to take it. They didn't RSVP. Not a yes, not a number, just silence, as if the envelope vanished into thin air. I tried not to let it sting, but even Jordan noticed the way I flinched every time the mail arrived. I kept telling myself I was okay, that I had accepted their absence. But acceptance doesn't erase the echo of empty chairs at your table. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from Ethan. He never called me unless it was a group family thing or my parents asked him to. Hey, he said, voice casual like we'd spoken yesterday. So, Mom told me about the wedding. She doesn't think she and Dad can make it. I bit back the sarcasm. Yeah, I figured. But listen, he continued. They've been really busy. Dad's trying to wrap up work before his early retirement, and Mom's been helping him with the logistics. It's not like they're skipping it to be cruel. No, I asked quietly. Then why does it feel like they've skipped everything important in my life? He went quiet. They flew across the country for your job promotion party, Ethan, but couldn't drive 2 hours for my engagement. Now they're skipping my wedding. At some point, the pattern stops being coincidence. He sighed. I don't know what to say. I guess you always made it clear you could handle things on your own. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't entirely wrong. I had handled everything. The loneliness, the constant comparison, the disappointment. I'd buried myself in self-sufficiency because I thought that's what it took to be respected. I made it too easy for them to neglect me. So I decided to stop being silent. A week before the wedding, I posted an open letter on my private blog. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't vindictive, just the truth. I wrote about growing up in the shadow of a sibling who could do no wrong. I wrote about the countless times I had celebrated my family's victories, even when mine were ignored. And I wrote about the pain of finally finding happiness, only to realize the people who were supposed to love me most didn't think it was worth celebrating. I didn't name names. I didn't attack, but the message was clear. And to my surprise, the post spread. Friends, acquaintances, even old classmates began sharing their own stories in the comments. I wasn't alone. So many people had felt invisible, within their own families, replaced by siblings, overlooked by parents who never noticed the quiet strength it took to endure being second best. I never expected it to go viral, but it did. A week later, Jordan and I stood under a floral arch, hands intertwined, hearts full. His parents were crying, my friends were beaming, and every seat was filled except 2, the ones meant for my parents. But I didn't cry. I didn't feel broken because in the front row, sitting quietly with tearful eyes, was someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my Aunt Claire. She pulled me into a hug after the ceremony. "I read your post," she whispered. "You were never invisible to me. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." That night, as Jordan and I slow danced under fairy lights and starlight, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "We saw the post. We didn't know you felt that way. Maybe we should have. Maybe we failed you." Another message followed. "We're not ready to talk yet, but we're listening." It wasn't an apology. Not really. But it was the first crack in a wall I had spent my life trying to climb. And suddenly I realized I didn't need it anymore. This new chapter. It wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about living fully, freely, and without permission. Because the real twist wasn't that I gave them a taste of their own neglect. The twist. I let go of needing their love and found peace.